Just me, because you're all here for this talk. So we've got a great panel. We're going to talk about the connected workplace, and we have the VP of Research and Development from CGS, who's going to be our panel moderator, Micah White. So let's welcome the crew to the stage.
Cell phone on vibrate.
All right, how's my microphone sound? Sounding good? Excellent.
Put the cell phone on vibrate.
Hi, everybody. It's Micah here. I want to thank everybody that came to our presentation today, because I know you've had a really long day, super energizing day here at the summit. So what I want to do today is moderate this panel for the connected workplace, integrating XR with IoT technologies in enterprise. So we have an amazing panel here today that has deep and wide experience and expertise. They've implemented through pilot, experimentation to go to production, and they're really leading the way. So when you have a look at IoT and you have a look at XR, those are two major technology areas. Some of you, many of you, will have significant experience in one of them or both. When you think about it, it's so big, you know it's converging. It's so big that, there's a hype cycle, and someone said to me today, it was really interesting, they said, we're leaving the trough of disillusionment. So, if you look at that curve or whatever, there's so many things happening, so much integration, it's real. So, what I would like to do, let's thank the panel for coming here today, and maybe get you to introduce yourselves. We've got Ed from Chevron. Why don't you introduce yourself, Ed?
My name is Ed Moore. I'm an operational technology strategist at Chevron. I've been in the energy industry for 30 years, at Chevron for about 14.
Awesome, Ed. And Henry's from Walmart. Why don't you introduce yourself, Henry?
Yeah, my name is Henry Akwa-Mensah, and currently I lead product and UX, but before then I was leading innovation and automation for Walmart. I've been in the VR space since 2007, looking at our Walmart operations. One of the things that we are looking at to do is how do we take advantage of cutting-edge solutions to optimize what we do, and I've been part of it for quite some time.
That is excellent, Henry. Kevin from Altria.
Sure, I'm Kevin Harrup. I work at Altria. I've been there about 16 years now. I'm part of an emerging technologies and innovation team that tries to push an old company like Altria to try technologies a little faster, a little bit more creative. So I'm basically the resident rule breaker. So yeah.
Awesome. And we got Anand from Mativ.
Hello, Anand Jaiswal. I'm the Director for Industry 4.0. I recently joined Mativ, which was previously known as WM International. Before joining Mativ, I was spent about 14 years with Stanley Black & Decker in standing up a similar Industry 4.0 program for them. Our goal is to take the dull, dirty, dangerous out of the plant floor and make I4O as a program rather than a project.
All right, Anand, very good. So before we begin and get into our presentation, I'd like to set the stage with a simple example of what work is like. What work is like without XR and Internet of Things, and then what work is like. So let's consider the role of an employee that works at a quick service restaurant, okay? And here's the problem that's going on in the quick service restaurant. We've all heard about it. We know it's the ice cream machine is broken, okay? So what happens? If you don't have the XR technology, the current state is they're going to put a sign on it. It's going to be busted. A truck roll probably have to happen. It might take an hour, 4 hours, who knows what's going to be. The owner-operator is going to be down, probably many thousands of dollars. And worse yet, you drove all over town, your kids are screaming in the back, and you don't get it. So, it's a poor experience. Imagine it with XR and Internet of Things. So just very quickly, sensors in the device send an error code. That error code causes a piece of content to be formatted, or retrieved from storage. A notification is sent to an owner-operator store that tells the staff that there is something for them to do on the in-store tablet. Somebody in the restaurant picks up the tablet. There's really only one instruction. Walk over to it. That's it. They walk over, they turn up the camera, and they get augmented reality instructions of how to reset the machine and put it into a reboot mode that solves 90% of the problems with the machine. Okay? So imagine that sort of situation versus the current state. So the folks here, the experts, they've got amazing stories. Let's get over to the stories. I'm just going to sit down, we'll get started. All right. So just to set ourselves up here, high level, and when Anand, we're going to lead with you. What is the role of XR in Industry 4.0?
So XR has played a very important role in our industry. We are in paper production. Before paper production, my previous company, Stanley Black & Decker, we were all into making widgets. We have used XR in training and development of new skill sets. The younger generation coming in these days is very savvy with technology, and they'll try to look into working for a company that has a forward-looking approach to technology. And when they see things like XR, VR, where they can look into a process virtually, train themselves, and then go back and apply that knowledge into a working environment, that is what excites them, and that's what gets them glued. That's what keeps them coming back.
So you're saying it offers a cachet to the young people or the new workers coming in?
Not just that, but also looking into the older generation, 30, 35, 40 years of work experience in the same process. How do they share their knowledge to the younger generation? So they take their tacit knowledge, help them transfer into a process in an XR world, and then with that, train the new generation.
That's excellent, Anand. So Henry, how about you? What's your take?
So looking at SRN, I agree with the training use case, which has been something that most organizations are looking at using XR in the training space. What I will add is think of what we do right now in our processes. In most cases, we are training them to execute the process. How about if I take that training and embed it as part of the process they're executing? So I'm directing them on how to do the work. So in terms of assuming, let's take a typical example in the supply chain space where I came from. If you have to order fill for a customer or you have to order fill to send to the store, I don't need to train you. I put the glasses on you, and all I have to tell you is follow the command prompt. Go to section A, pick one item and put it here, and then just follow the prompt. You don't have to know the locations within the facility. All you have to do is it can help you navigate to where you are going. So if I look at the role of XR right now, I think it's also helping in executing processes within organizations.
That's interesting, Henry, and you're not trying to automate, you're not trying to reduce the human element, you're trying to direct drive the human element that is leading to a lot of optimizations and, leading to probably new opportunities within the organization as well for the workers and both for the business. So that's very, very cool. Ed, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so for Chevron, Industry 4.0 is really our effort to digitize our business. And what that's going to do is we're putting more sensors into the field. We're going to be bringing a lot more data to where we understand how our processes are running. We've been doing this for most of our facilities for decades, but getting more and more sensors and getting more of the actual process digitized. So with XR, we now have all this digital data, but how do we get it back to the worker? How do we let that worker work safer? And that's very important to Chevron. Safety is a critical element. And a lot of our processes and environments that we work in are hazardous, and we have to be careful. So with XR, as we move forward with not just the training, where it's proven that the retention is significantly higher when you're doing the VR training, but as we bring the training to the field and kind of training on demand, as Henry was talking about, when they're out there performing that operation that maybe they only do once a year or twice a year, having them have step-by-step instructions. And as the technology advances and we're starting to be able to have the cameras and the AI processing on it, we'll be able to actually help them and guide them and tell them, nope, don't turn it left, you got to turn it right. And so it's all those type of activities showing them, in an AR environment, what the world and the hazards are around them so they can be more safe.
What an ROI statement, right? Lives saved. So, Kevin, you have some thoughts. How about you?
Yeah, I can't follow up lives saved, but I can kind of bite on the excitement piece. I've been to some very interesting panels here at the conference, and I just love to hear, fellow colleagues, folks that I look up to talk about user experience. I mean, you think about employee experience, that EX. I mean, the human brain is so many studies, and folks from academia and other experts here can speak to it much better than I can. But natively, you're going to resonate more with what you can see and actually touch and feel from a human sensory perspective. So if we're, unlocking the power of XR to do that, and then you're combining IoT with it, it's just about delivering information in a way that somebody's going to retain it. I mean, I went to school like everybody in this room, and I can't remember so much of the stuff I took classes and wrote papers on, because if you don't use it, you lose it. But riding a bike and so many other things that you've did yourself, it embeds in a different way. So to try to take that and solve it and really see how we can leverage that, that's something that excites me.
That's awesome, Kevin. So, Kevin, let's stay with you and talk about, you guys have done implementation work. You've seen programs through, things from pilot going into production. So you've seen a lot and you've experienced a lot. So some of the best practices for integrating XR with other enterprise technologies, what sort of things can you tell us?
Yeah, it's new. That's the big. No matter what device came out or how long it's been here, it's still new to most enterprises and the infrastructure that we've built. So I was talking to somebody earlier saying that a lot of folks back at Altria, no shade on my own people, you can't think about some of these devices like you do a laptop, where I bought it and we're locked in for 3 years to the next product refresh. I mean, some of these things are going to be much shorter life cycles. They're going to be out of service, new capabilities, new platforms. So trying to take a holistic approach up top and saying, hey, what's the value proposition? What are you trying to achieve? And try to be, at least from a mindset, as device agnostic as possible, and not lock into this particular thing and future-proof it for the next 6 years. Hell, it's probably going to be gone in 2 years and you're going to be on to something else, right? So I think, for me, having a higher level view and thinking about it like that enables us to kind of solve whatever business concerns and risks that are there. So, my IT security folks may be concerned about privacy, or, there's people on the network side about connectivity and how it's going to be reliable. Like when you're thinking about it like that, I think it's just a smarter approach. So I can get into some specificity of some of the projects if you'd like me to, Micah, but one of the examples we had was around a trace tag device during COVID, where we were trying to do contact tracing. So if somebody came in and they tested positive, we didn't want that to spread any more than it already had, because people are going home, production's getting stopped. So we looked up some wearable devices and we had people wear them, and we had to reassure them, we're not tracking you, we're just tracking interactions that you're having that are closer than 6 feet. And all these concerns pop up. Hey, it's privacy. What are you doing with Anand's information and Henry's and everybody else's? Are you taking their information, being responsible with it? And then how are you maintaining that record? So we had to kind of go into it with an approach, which is kind of the spirit of any group like mine, of hacking the whole thing. Like, so if I'm not saying, hey, this is Kevin that's talking to Micah, I can say, hey, that's 1236 talking to 789. If you anonymize that data in some way that you can then reassociate it on the safe side of the firewall in our house, I don't have to have that argument about what that particular vendor is doing in the cloud with the anonymized data, right?
Kevin, that's a lot of groups, right? There's a lot of groups across the organization. You were talking about, InfoSec, IT, all these different. How siloed is it, guys? Like, how siloed is the enterprise? Do you have to, gain agreement with other groups? How does that work to to make sure that the project can get done and everybody's a stakeholder? Like, what's it like?
Let me pass it to the fellow so I'm not dominating the microphones here, but it's a perfect time to go back and humble up and saying, hey, these same people, regardless how siloed it is, they keep us up and running. Yeah. And they have to be reliable. And when something breaks and that machine goes down, they got to get it up and running. So you have to be empathetic to their views. Yeah. But at the same time, we're tasked with trying to future-proof. So you can't be siloed. You can't just say, hey, they're jerks and they'll never get me and I'm perfect. And nah, you got to look at it
what's
both
it like
ways.
in your world?
I think let's step back and look at when I'm bringing in a solution, an SR solution into the space. First, I'm bringing a solution to solve a problem. So the first thing that we got to ask ourselves is, what are we solving for? And who are we solving for? So that is where we start from. So identifying the teams who we have to work with is critical to start with. In my world, start with the operators who you are solving the problem for. So first, you need buy-in. Operators buy in, operators are aligned with the product team. Now, we have our POC, we think this is what we want to go with. The next level is identify from my technology team, my product team, my compliance team, security team, IT, who needs to be on the table to make that decision on how we bring this in. And that is where the adoption process is really starts. Because when we do it in silo and we decide that as product team, we saw something, a solution that we are interested in, we test and we want to go by ourselves. You get to that point that the tech team asks you, did you consider the architecture? Did you consider the data that we are sharing? Have you considered XYZ from security standpoint and whatnot? So the best way to gain adoption when you are trying to integrate a solution is having a cross-functional team. Think of all stakeholders that will have a say in being able to integrate a solution into the environment and bring them in earlier on. Let them be part of the process, be part of the journey, understand why we are doing this, who we are doing it for, and what we need from each of you. So you all become part of the solution and not coming to you with a request. So that is what I see. The silos are there. We can't break the silos because we have individual tasks and individual mandates on what we have to execute. However, we have to find ways to break the silos and work together for what we are trying to achieve. And the only way is forming a cross-functional team to attack earlier enough.
I think that's good advice for any organization. Henry, thanks for that. How about with testing? Ed, you're trying to get these technologies to combine and become even more powerful. You're trying to amplify the strengths. So when you're trying to integrate and do testing, what sort of strategies come to mind?
So there are a couple of things there. There's the user testing. You really want the users to buy into the technology. So as Henry was saying, get them involved, make sure it brings value to them. It's easy to use. It works well. It always works. As you talk about integrating it and testing it to where it can scale, and that's an important thing. You have to think about enterprise scale. Once you get beyond the POC stage and you're like, pretty sure this is going to bring value, you need to be thinking about the scaling aspect. So that is, as was said earlier, bringing in the IT departments, the security groups, right? So we partner very closely with those. Some of that took time. We started, as an example, with the HoloLens in late 2016, and it took us until October of 2018 to get even support for managing devices. But before we rolled it out, it was basically like any other mobile device. So treating it like, and trying to find a Leica within your organization for these technologies, you can just follow that pattern and follow that scale. And just make sure security is so important. You have to have these devices that are secure, especially in XR as they're getting more and more detailed data about your operations.
Thank you for that, Ed. So we've got another question here, guys. And by the way, I forgot to mention, at the end of our presentation, we'll open up for a couple questions. So we hope that you'll have a question or two. We'll have a couple minutes at the end. That would be great. I know the panel will appreciate it. It'd be awesome. We're not going to come in here today and be the ringer and tell you exactly which use case is the definitive one, going forward. We had a talk earlier today, and it's almost like we were all kind of laughing. It's a little bit like the internet when Netscape Navigator came out and people were starting to do data-driven web pages. Okay, so you could come in front of you and go, the best web form or data-driven web page for, active server page is going to be to do this and to do that. You can't really tell. There's going to be innumerable awesome solutions that come. But as we are thinking about it, what are the top IoT use cases that feature XR today? So Henry, let's start with you. What's your take on it?
I think if I look at one of the top cases that we have used, I'll go back to talk about what I call the directed work. And I think I spoke about it a little bit. And just want to give a little history about how we got through the directed work. I think if you are deploying some of these solutions and you are not in the mode of willing to fail and learn, I think it's going to be a tough sell for you. In 2018, that is when we started our AR journey, trying to bring AR to what we call our order filling process. Our first test failed miserable. It failed miserably. However, we realized that there are some learnings in there that we could carry on. And that test was done in United Kingdom. And then we kind of went with the vendor. We evolved the solution a little bit and took it to Canada. Again, we didn't do as well as we expected, but it showed promise. Again, we went back, we evolved the solution again by giving the vendor some insight based on the test. And then we went for our third test, which was in Central America, and we were significantly successful. And that is when so that was just using the AR for order filling. Now, the next level that I want to do is when my order fillings are order filling, we send cases to the store. So I want to build a pallet. And that requires me training people for hours to learn how to build a pallet. We have to go through progression. So you come, we hire you, we go through all that training, and then we expect you from day one, your productivity at a certain level, and by, let's say, week number 12, 13, your productivity should be at a certain level. But with the use of XR, we are able to shrink that productivity curve that we expect. Now, what I'm doing for you is, you don't even need the training, because guess what? Yeah. All I'm telling you is I have to teach you how to put on the glasses and then follow the command prompt. And then you have to go order fill, and then you look on there and it tells you this is exactly where I want you to put the case. So we are now embedding vision technology, the AR, and then IoT. And then it's kind of bringing it all together to help execute that task for the associate. So now we are taking the thinking out of the process. I don't have to be an expert in the process. I don't have to even know how to do it. All I have to be able to is see what it's telling me and follow the command. Yeah. So this is one typical use case that is changed the way we operate in order filling space.
I think that's killing it. I love that story. I love that use case. Anand, how about you? What use cases are you passionate about?
So we have a lot of fine paper production. We have a lot of film production. The use cases that we are focusing on right now is how do we do our center lining, how do we do our SPCs so that we can have tighter process controls. These are very, very fast running machines to the tune of paper production at 700 meters per minute. Any small change to that machine parameter could make or break the day for you. And using XR technology, where you're capturing through IoT thousands of parameters on a sub-second level, what is the optimal settings for that machine, for that grade of paper or the film that needs to be applied so that the production does not stop, the line does not stop. It's one mantra that what we teach is the line should run as fast as it can, and it should, because anything under your cycle time is a lost productivity. So how do we take the XR technology and optimize what we call as the golden batch is where we are focused at.
Kevin, what use cases are you passionate about?
The things in IoT. I mean, if you have XR, it's just a means of consuming that data. the digital twin use cases, digital twins like cloud. People hear digital twin and it means one thing to one person and one to another. But think about, wearing a mixed reality headset and you're walking around your machine and everything that's on your HMI screen is spatially anchored, that's commensurate to the actual place in the machinery and the data there, unlocking that capability for the person that's walking around the floor as the devices get lighter and better. Thinking about that trouble call, how can I do AR wayfinding to a machine for an IE that needs to work on machines? All those possibilities, can exist if you have the connections. The XR is just the means of consumption that, again, is more native. So that excites me. So.
Oh, interesting. No, I definitely agree with that. What about 5G? So we've heard about 5G for a long time, right? 5G is implemented, many new solutions, compound solutions. Ed, take us through the impact of the edge network, edge compute, latency, all those matters with XR and IoT integration. What do you see, the advantages, disadvantages, or possibilities with 5G?
And so for 5G, it's just really one of the communication technologies that we see are critical for us to really adopt XR in the field. Wi-Fi 6 is the other one, but what are we looking for from these technologies? We're basically looking for lower latency, we're looking for higher bandwidth, and we're looking for more device density. So with that, and as you asked the question, why? What do we need to do with all that data? So as we look at more complex models and our digital twins become more complex, their LiDAR scans, we have some LiDAR scans that are in the terabyte size, or in some of them even get larger than that. How do we get these complex models to a device that there's no way you have enough compute, or at least for a decade we won't have enough compute to render on device? So that's where we look at using remote rendering technologies. That remote rendering technology requires very low latency. So we're talking 50 milliseconds or less. So 5G is really the only cellular technology that will give us that. So we would have to have that if we want to be able to bring these complex models out into the field, or even to some of our more remote facilities that we have. So I think that's a key aspect of 5G and the capabilities it's going to bring. And then just all the sensor data, back to the IoT topic we were talking about, getting that data to the cloud, being able to do real-time analytics, and then sending alerts, and again, back to safety, being able to make our people in the field safer, right? Making sure we have that connectivity, so when there is an issue in a facility, we're able to direct our people to the locations that are safest for them.
Does the panel have any other thoughts about 5G? How does it impact? How does it improve the integration, XR solutions, Internet of Things?
I think Ed hit on the key point. Is about that experience. Can you deliver what you need to deliver in a means that is going to, give that user the optimal experience? But I love where you were going with safety. It's all to an end. To Henry's point about actually delivering a solution to a problem or doing something. You just can't do that sometimes if you're limited by bandwidth. We were trading war stories earlier while we were waiting to come on stage about all the things we had to do to test out some of these devices before you could get them on an official OT network with the right, bandwidth and low latency. So I know what it's like to have that low latency, and you definitely need that for a quality experience.
In our case, our facilities are not at the places where you will have the best of the bandwidths available. So 5G is the only solution if you want to go to an IoT route for us. And we are in the process of experimenting in some of the facilities.
Henry, how about you?
I think I told you this formula earlier on by John McFadden that was talking about the future of XR. And the formula is, think of XR plus IoT times AI to the power of 5G. What would the answer be? Enormous what we can do with it. Because now we are not able to do some things because of latency, because of the data. But if 5G allow us to freely move data in milliseconds, there is no telling what the future is going to be. So I think for me, that is what I see. the 5G kind of open a ton of possibility for what XR becomes in the future.
Oh, that's awesome. No, that's excellent. Let's flip the question on its head a little bit. Internet of Things, data pipeline, feeds, the XR layer, which is visualization, presentation, and many other things. What happens when, I know in my experience with product in XR, oftentimes you don't have internet. So there's no internet at all, or periodically not having internet. So do we assume fallback positions? Do we assume secondary modes? Do we ensure that, product is functional in an offline capability where it's possible? Obviously, you can't collab, you can't do a remote see what I see. What's your sense on that, guys? If there's no internet, what does that mean?
It definitely affects productivity a lot, because in an industry which is continuous production, lack of real-time closed-loop data can mess things up really quickly. Think of, I was in a facility yesterday in France. They produce paper, 600 kilometers of paper per day. So enough to reach south of France to Paris. And initially, a few years ago, when IoT was not so prevalent, their scrap rate was through the roof. And with introduction of IoT, we were able to bring it down substantially to a point where it's negligible scrap rate. So that's the power of IoT. You take your physical process, you understand how to narrow down your process parameters to a golden batch. That's the key. Can you do it on paper? Yes, you can. But at what cost does it come in?
Thanks for that, Anand. Okay, guys, so when we look out into the future, what connected workplace innovations do we see on the horizon? So what do we think is truly coming and or maybe coming? And then, maybe not in the next 6 months or so, but in the future, where do you see IoT or IIoT and XR integration? Like what can happen? Based on everything that you guys have done and seen, I've heard these amazing stories about the effects on people, the effects on process, the effects on the business. What do we see in the future? Ed, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So, for us, as we look forward, and I look more in like the 3 to 5 year range, or some of this will be quicker, is if we truly can start getting all of our facilities, I would say fully digitized. So the quote earlier that was put up by McKinsey around that the digital twin was the foundation of the metaverse, I would say IoT is kind of the concrete for the digital twin. But getting all that data, and then also for our people, having all their health statistics, monitoring our people in real time so we know they're safe. We work in a lot of hot conditions. How do we make sure that they're not, getting dehydrated? But having all that data, and you have this future vision of on your tabletop in your control rooms, you have your facility, you have all the alerts showing up in three-dimensional space, you have AI algorithms working on that data and alerting and automatically telling people to do certain things. As we move towards a fully autonomous operational future, we see this being the way we visualize all our data. So today we have kind of 2D screens that represent our processes. We'll move to more of these 3D. So I think of the movies and the capabilities you see there. It's going to come. We're going to get there. And the technology is pretty close now. We can do it. We just can't do it at scale. And there's so much infrastructure we need to put in place to enable it across all our facilities.
No, that's great, Ed. And I think we all agree. The technology and the solutions that we've seen here at the conference, and there's definitely a vibe. So there's a vibe that things are accelerating, and these solutions are coming. And not only they're coming, they're here. So there's just a lot of real great interest in it. So thank you for that. Kevin, how about you? What do you see in the future?
Just building on what Ed talked about. If I'm old enough to show my age, I remember the Dewey Decimal System. I remember going to the public library and you had to look up a book and you had to get that book and find the information. It's hilarious now when you think about it versus how quickly you can just grab your phone and search for something. I'm a Google, I know there's some Microsoft folks here, Bing, whatever your search engine is, how quickly you can get that information. To Ed's point, if you're taking away that 2D screen and you're wearing glasses or contact lenses and everything is kind of already connected, that to me is that next evolution. It's about getting the information to the user or to the individual and building off of that. That's the future direction. It's connectivity, access to information. I mean, you guys remember getting on the internet and it's be-doo, be-doo. And, we were so patient downloading pictures. And now, if that website doesn't open in a few seconds, you're clicking off of it. So that's just acclimation to expectations of low latency of information delivery. Who knows what it's going to be here in 10 years, but you can see the progress and it's very encouraging.
Excellent. Anand, how about you?
For us, it's multiple things. XR, IoT, how you want to put it. The first question that we always try to solve or solve for the operators is, how can we make your life easier? How can we give you a better career path? Because people come, they don't come to generate data, they come to produce widgets for us. And they are not experts in digital technologies. So how do we take a person who has never worked on PCs to get them acclaimed and comfortable with this new technology is the biggest thing, that opportunity that we see. Another thing that always comes up is, are you monitoring us? Because now with IoT data, we can understand what works and what does not work. It's no more of a tacit knowledge that helps us refine a process. It's more of a data-driven process. So how do we take that approach of data-driven and help our operators understand that concept of improving their work based on data, not just based on their thinking. That's where our biggest next leap would be.
Thanks for that, Anand. Yeah. Henry, how about you?
So I'll take this and partially solve the equation that I kind of gave out. I don't think we've solved it yet, and we are not going to solve it here today. It's something for you to solve, and maybe our grandchildren will keep solving that equation, and depends on what else comes. So think of what I gave, which is XR plus IoT multiplied by AI to the power of 5G. What I would say is partially solving the equation, a connected, customized life on Earth. Because the data will be so customized to you, and things will be so connected, and the data will be so available so quickly, we can do things that we haven't thought of. So let's give an example. Now we are training people. We develop a training that we use the same training to train everyone. Think of life where we look at the way you learn based on some sensors, and it's something that we've tested. Some sensors that track your cognitive functions and maybe your heart rate and how you respond to certain aspects of the training. So I can adapt the training, one, to the way you learn, and two, to the areas I see you are going to struggle. In most cases, I think most of you have seen this, and I've seen a lot of this in my lifetime. We are in operation, and this guy is a good operator. He is a good engineer. He can design, build buildings like no tomorrow. But he does not have the competencies to be a leader. And because he's good at what he does, we promote him to leadership. And we don't customize the training to what he needs. We give him the general leadership training that he needs. And then he goes in and struggles. I've seen people being promoted, and within 6 months, they are out of the door. It wasn't their fault, because the training was not adapted to what they need. That is what this is going to give us. That is one of the solutions that we are going to see. Another way, how do I like to work? There are some that says, hey, I like to have the glasses on me and I like to get a directed work. There are some that say, give me the training and let me figure out how I want to do things. So we are going to customize. It's going to help individuals customize things the way they want it, even how we purchase, even how years ago we never thought the internet is going to be where it is, and those companies that stay in the front and ready for customers that will come to the store were those that survived during the COVID. So now what is going to happen is things are going to be so customizable to the individual within the workplace as well as to processes is going to be a little different. So in a nutshell, what I would say the future that I'm looking to see is a connected, customized world where it's more tailored to how we do things and how we like to do things.
Henry, how do you see it? Do you see the people opt in the future? They say, I prefer to use headwear, or no, I really don't. Do they opt in consciously? Does data and analytics, let the organization know who likes it and who doesn't? Is it something that's done behind the scenes? What's your take of this customizable, flexible world?
So now, as you've seen, in most cases, the device is not only the headset. Now we have some of these capabilities being in the phones. So if I'm able to have the same capability either in the headset or in the phone, how does it matter?
Yeah.
Whichever device you use, you are able to achieve it. So what makes you comfortable in what you are doing? Remember, in the workplace, one of the most critical things is associate experience. It's not about just getting the work done. Are they comfortable the way they are working? Is the experience adapted to the way they like to do things? And that is where we are going. So that is how I see this going.
That's awesome. Does the panel have any final comments on that, or we think we're good for right now? We good, everybody?
Good.
Okay. So listen, gang, we're believe it or not, that passed in a blink of an eye for us. We're coming up to time, but we did say that we would allow for a couple questions if anyone has any. I will say too that this expert panel will be available after the presentation if you guys want to come up and talk about anything that you heard that maybe thought was interesting. They have said that you can absolutely, they would love for you to do that. Oh. Super.
Hello. I'm Tesla Collier. Tesla Collier from Gensler. I do have a question for the gentleman, the second one, from right to left. You were talking, I didn't get all the names, I got a little late, sorry about that. But you were talking about how getting to know the team and to know the problem and understand it so you can define a team. Do you have an approach that is a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach, or do you do both?
Thank you, and good question. I think, interestingly, is the problem I'm dealing with right now. So, we have to look at it from two perspectives. One, is it a long-term strategy? So if it's an organizational strategy, sometimes it may have to be a top-down approach, because we are setting our strategy. This is where we want to go in the future. So go look for capabilities that will get us there. And then there is the second piece, which is we are finding solutions to optimize our current process. And guess what? The VP of operation is never executing that process, but the VP of operation is detecting what needs to be what optimization needs to be done. In that case, we need to go back to the operators that are actually in the space right now, do some discovery, understand their pain points, and then take their pain point and find solution to it. So that would be my two approach. If it is long-term organizational strategy, top-down makes sense. But if it's optimization for current processes, your best bet will be use the operators that are executing the process. Maybe if anybody have a different, something to add to it?
No, I think that's a good, I mean.
It's a good one.
Yeah, you want to go both ways. I think one thing you should also look at when you're looking at trying to optimize processes is look at the process. And if you do, you might do it a completely different way and you might not need those steps, right? So, you know, as we move to more autonomy, there's certain things that we just won't do anymore, right? And so, especially as you start monitoring your equipment more and more, these routine maintenance activities you just won't do, right? The equipment will tell you when it's going to fail or when it's about to fail or when it needs maintenance, right? So that's the other thing is definitely take a broad perspective on the actual work that you're trying to achieve, what's the end goal, and don't just try to, you know, take a paper process and digitize it. Relook at the way you do the process.
Yes. And thank you, Ed. Quickly add, technology is not a solution. It's an enabler. Optimize the process and put the technology on top. In most cases, we defer to technology as the solution, and that is sometimes why we fail. So first, optimize the process first, and then you put the technology on top. So I agree with Ed on that.
Truer words have not been spoken. Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Listen, I just
We have one more question.
There's one more.
Oh, sure.
Oh, I think we are done.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We invite you to come up and interact. These folks have traveled a long way to be here, so please come up and interact. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.